My name is Martin Hayes, and I never imagined I would be sharing this. I was a man of science, a geophysicist who spent years studying the ice walls of Antarctica, never believing in anything beyond what I could measure and observe. But everything changed on February 12th, 2025, when my life came to an end. I was on another expedition when the disaster happened. In an instant, I found myself floating above my lifeless body. What happened next defied all the laws of physics I once believed were unbreakable. Jesus showed me the truth about Antarctica, the great lie that is about to be revealed, and what truly lies beyond the layers of ice. The expedition should have been just another ordinary day in the frozen, unexplored regions of Antarctica. The scientific team, including myself, was researching strange electromagnetic signals emerging from beneath the ice. These signals had been detected for months, oscillating in ways that made no sense at all. My job was to analyze the patterns and try to understand whether they were linked to some unknown geothermal activity or if there was some hidden force beneath the frozen surface. On the morning of February 12, 2025, I woke up early at our research base. The sun was barely touching the horizon, casting a strange blue light over the ice fields. As I donned my thermal suit, I felt an inexplicable unease. It wasn't fear, but something inside me told me that something was wrong. I ignored that feeling, attributing it to the exhaustion of weeks without sleep. The mission that day was simple: to drill deeper than we had ever done before, in search of an area that emitted unusual low-frequency vibrations. As we drilled, things started to get increasingly strange. The equipment failed, our GPS system broke down, and even the radios picked up distorted whispers, sounds that didn't come from any of us. Then, exactly at 11:42 in the morning, everything happened. A gigantic crack opened beneath my feet. The ice, once solid and unyielding, shattered like broken glass. I had no time to react. In 1 second I was standing firm, and the next I was falling into darkness, engulfed by the icy silence. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the radio hissing in my headset. Someone on my team shouted my name, but it was too late. I was no longer there. The Antarctic mission had been planned for over a year. Our objective was simple: to uncover the origin of the anomalies beneath the ice. For decades, scientists had speculated about what might be hidden under the vast desolation, and our team, with government authorization, was permitted to explore areas that had been strictly off-limits for years. What we found, however, was far beyond what we expected. Days before my death, we made an unexpected discovery: signs of structures beneath the ice. Were these man-made formations or something much older than human civilization itself? The data made no sense. Satellite images showed perfectly symmetrical formations, impossible geometric patterns, and something colossal buried miles below the surface. I had never been one to subscribe to conspiracy theories, but when I looked at those radar images, I knew that something was being hidden from the world. The further we advanced, the stranger the scene became. Our drills were not encountering the solid ice we expected, but rather hollow chambers where the temperature was warmer than it should have been. The air was charged with a strange electricity, causing our instruments to fail. Then suddenly, our communications were cut off. We were in contact with mission control, and suddenly everything went silent. No radio, no satellite phone, no emergency signal, just static. It was then that the ground beneath us trembled, and within minutes the drilling site began to collapse. When the ground began to give way, I tried to shout to my team, but everything crumbled. In the moment my body hit the ice, I expected to feel pain. Overwhelming and suffocating pain, but I felt none of that. Instead, I felt light, free. It took me a moment to understand what had happened. I was floating. Below me, my body lay fallen, partially buried under the shattered ice. I should have been horrified, but I wasn't. There was no panic, no struggle, only an overwhelming calm that defied logic. Then I saw them, white figures, luminous beings, standing at the edge of the fissure, silently watching. I couldn't see their faces, but their presence was so powerful that I immediately knew they were not human. When I turned, I felt a force pulling me upward. The ice, the ruins, my team, all began to vanish. An opening of intense light appeared before me, and it wasn't just light, it was alive, pulsating with energy. Without hesitation, I took a step toward it. I've translated the text into English below. "The world is blind to what exists beyond its vision," Jesus said, "but you will see." Then he led me. The landscape around us began to change, and suddenly we were no longer in the vast frozen plains of Antarctica. I found myself in a completely different place, a place that defied everything I believed I knew. When Jesus took my hand, the icy ruins of Antarctica disappeared. I expected to be enveloped by that tunnel of light that so many near-death survivors described, but what I saw was different. The light was not simply a tunnel, it was a portal, a threshold between realities. It stretched out before me like an endless path, yet deep down, I knew that it was no ordinary path. The air, or rather what surrounded me, seemed to vibrate, as if imbued with a presence beyond my understanding. I took a cautious step, and immediately I found myself being pulled, moving effortlessly, carried towards something much greater. Colors beyond human perception flickered around me, changing and merging in ways my mind could barely process. It was beautiful, but also overwhelming. Then, as suddenly as the journey had begun, it stopped. I found myself standing on a solid surface, but it was neither ice nor rock. The ground pulsed with energy, as if it were alive. Jesus was by my side, his presence radiating immeasurable love and authority. "Look, Martin, and see what has been hidden," he said. Before me stretched a landscape I did not recognize. It was neither the sky nor the earth, but something entirely different. At the center, rising like a fortress, was the colossal, ancient and impenetrable ice wall. The truth struck me like a hammer. Those formations were not natural. The ice walls of Antarctica had been placed there for a reason. Jesus, with a voice both sorrowful and firm, said, "And soon the world will try to break them." I looked at him, my mind filled with questions, but when my eyes met his, all doubt and fear vanished. His face was indescribable, at once familiar, yet beyond human comprehension. His eyes, as deep as wells of light, carried all the knowledge and wisdom of the universe. "You were chosen to see this because you spent your life in search of answers," he said. "But some truths cannot be measured. They need to be revealed." I felt tears streaming down my spiritual form, though I couldn't exactly explain why. It was as if his presence had stripped away all my doubts, and yet despite everything he loved me. He raised his hand, and suddenly I saw the earth as it truly was, not through human eyes but with a divine perspective. The Antarctic region, which I had studied my entire life, now appeared different. The ice walls were not just natural barriers, they were something much greater, something placed there with a purpose. "There is a reason why men were kept from knowing what lies beyond," Jesus said. "And soon this protection will be lifted. Satan, his greatest weapon is deception," Jesus said, his voice filled with deep sorrow. "The world is walking straight into the trap that he has prepared." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to believe that the discoveries in Antarctica were nothing more than scientific advances. But as Jesus showed me the truth, I knew it was not so. They had been planning this for decades, preparing the world to accept what was coming. I saw secret meetings between rulers and powerful figures, conspiracies woven in the shadows, all carefully orchestrated. It wasn't merely a search for scientific answers, but a much larger agenda, with a very clear objective. The world was about to witness a great revelation, something powerful, something that would change everything. World leaders would begin to announce that they had found something beneath the ice of Antarctica, something that promised to be the key to humanity's future, the next phase of evolution. "They will present it as a gift," Jesus told me, "a way to unite humanity. but what they are really doing is opening a door that should never be opened. A chill ran through my soul as I understood what he meant. It wasn't just about hidden civilizations or ancient structures. It was something much more sinister. The ice walls of Antarctica were not barriers meant to protect us from the outside, but seals to keep something even more dangerous at bay. Jesus stayed by my side as the vision unfolded before my eyes. What I had once dismissed as religious metaphors, spiritual warfare, fallen entities, hidden realms, was now undeniably before me. The ice walls of Antarctica were not merely physical barriers. They were seals placed by divine authority to prevent something far more dangerous from emerging into our world. The battle was never fought against flesh and blood, Jesus said, his voice filled with sorrow. It has always been between forces beyond human sight. Now those forces were preparing for their greatest deception. I saw beings of darkness, their distorted forms writhing within the ice. Their presence made the air around tremble. They were not humans, nor extraterrestrials as many had believed, but something completely different, beings that had been banished, imprisoned beneath the frozen expanse for millennia. Now humanity, in its arrogance and insatiable thirst for knowledge, was about to unleash them. A huge fissure opened in the ice, and shadows began to seep into the world. Scientists, oblivious to what they had unleashed, celebrated their discoveries. But the world's leaders knew exactly what they were doing. They were fulfilling a greater plan. The change that the world would experience would not be as we had expected. They will come disguised as saviors, Jesus said, with immense sadness in his eyes, and many will welcome them with open arms. As the vision continued, I was taken beyond the ice walls, to a place I had never imagined, not even in my wildest dreams. The ice was not just a protective layer over ancient ruins or lost civilizations, but a portal, a threshold between our world and something entirely different. There, beneath the ice, lay a colossal city, built with materials that could not be identified. Its architecture was impossible, with geometric shapes pulsating and changing as if they were alive. At the center of this city stood a throne, but the being who would sit upon it was not of God. I saw world leaders, powerful individuals, even some spiritual figures, gathered around this structure. Their eyes were filled with reverence, as if they were waiting for something they had always known would come. This moment was not a scientific revelation. It was the grand unveiling of a plan that had been in the making for a long time. Jesus turned to me and said, "They will claim it is a new beginning, a new era of enlightenment. But now you see the truth. This is the final great lie." I saw the news broadcasts, images on TV, journalists announcing this discovery as something that would redefine history. Scientists would proclaim that humanity had finally found its true origins, and then the great deception would begin. The journalists spoke, but their words sounded empty. They announced a historic milestone, an achievement that would redefine the destiny of humanity. The world would be informed that finally we were not alone, that we had been guided by beings beyond our understanding. They would claim that these beings were the true creators of humanity, and that ancient religions, including Christianity, had misinterpreted our origins. The lie would be so colossal that even the most faithful, the most devout, would be at risk of believing it. Jesus looked at me, and the weight of his words fell upon me like a rock. "The true test of faith will begin here," he said, with a firmness that cut through my soul. I looked at him, feeling panic rising within me. How could people not see? How could they believe such a colossal lie? But Jesus' expression remained unchanged. He knew what was coming. "The enemy will not use force," Jesus said with deep sorrow. "He will use deception. He will not make people choose between good and evil. He will make them believe that evil is good." I saw the world celebrating, people rejoicing as if they were about to attain salvation. Governments, corporations, even spiritual figures would align with these beings, believing that they were taking the next step in human progress. Technology would advance at an impossible speed, curing diseases, creating new forms of energy, even offering the promise of eternal life. The world would embrace all of this as a sign of evolution, but deep down, something much darker was taking shape. While I was paralyzed with horror, Jesus touched my shoulder and said, "It's time for you to return. You've seen what is to come. Now you must warn the others." I wanted to stay, to ask more questions, but before I could utter a word, everything around me began to disappear. The next moment was a shock of reality. I gasped for air, my body convulsed, feeling the pain of life returning to me. The doctors screamed in shock. My team gathered around me, stunned. I had been dead for 12 minutes. What I saw and experienced in those moments beyond death was no longer a distant memory. Now everything was much more real than before. I looked around, still not fully understanding what had happened. My team was by my side, some with tears welling in their eyes, others speechless. But the scientific instruments were still functioning, registering anomalies, as if even the devices knew that something had changed. And I knew what had happened. I knew what was coming. As I lay in the hospital bed, still trying to comprehend what had just occurred, one thing became clear to me. I had been brought back with a purpose. The world needed to know about the lie that was about to be revealed, and few would be prepared for it. Jesus had shown me the truth, and now it was my mission to share it. Would people be able to listen? I didn't know, but what I did know was that I could not remain silent. One night, unable to sleep, I turned on the TV. I saw a panel of experts discussing the recent discoveries in the deepest layers of Antarctica. They spoke of strange signals and ancient structures, claiming that something monumental had been found. The host declared it the greatest scientific discovery of all time. I froze. The way they spoke left me uneasy. It wasn't just excitement. It was a meticulous setup, a way to shape the public's mind. Clues were being dropped, as if they wanted us to get used to the idea, to prepare us for the grand revelation. It was exactly what Jesus had shown me. The deception was beginning there. It was the start of the process, and I knew humanity was being conditioned. They wouldn't force people to choose between good and evil. Instead, they would convince them that evil was good, and that would be the true test of faith. Jesus had warned me that the enemy would use deception to seduce the world. Now I could see the game unfolding before my eyes, with every word carefully chosen, every news segment designed to mislead hearts and minds. I felt an urgent need to act. I wasn't just a witness, I was a messenger. But how could one man stop what was about to happen? How could I convince the masses? The sense of powerlessness was overwhelming. Then Jesus' words echoed in my mind. It is not your task to convince the world. It is your task to tell the truth. Those who seek the truth will recognize it. In the days that followed, the sense of urgency only grew. I knew that time was running out. The news about Antarctica was intensifying, with increasingly enigmatic headlines. Scientists were beginning to talk about extraordinary discoveries beneath the ice. Each day, the evidence became more apparent, but what the world didn't know was that these discoveries were not an advancement, but the beginning of a great lie. I saw the scientists who had once been my colleagues now speaking on TV about signals of life, or advanced technology buried for millennia, as if it were a milestone for humanity. But it was all nothing more than preparation, a carefully constructed story to get the world to accept what was coming. The most terrifying part was that I knew exactly what would come next. They would start selling the idea that we were on the verge of making contact with aliens, a discovery that would change the destiny of humanity. But what they didn't say was that these entities were not from another planet. They had been there, under the ice, for millennia. Jesus showed me that when the truth was finally revealed to the world, It would be presented as a new beginning, a new era of enlightenment, but in reality, it would mark the end of true faith. Humanity would be deceived, and those who believed the lie would be irreversibly corrupted. I no longer knew how to stop it, but what Jesus had told me still echoed in my mind. It is not your task to convince the world. It is your task to tell the truth. Now, my mission was clear. I could not prevent what was about to happen, but I could do my part to ensure that those who were alert to the truth would not be easily deceived. As the days went by, my determination only grew stronger. I knew that the revelation was drawing near, and the more I observed, the clearer the truth became. I began sharing my story with journalists, alternative media outlets, and even former colleagues who already suspected the lies about Antarctica. Some listened, others laughed, but I no longer cared. What mattered was that the truth be known to those willing to hear. Then something strange started to happen. People I had never met, scientists, researchers, even former military personnel, began reaching out to me. They had seen things, experienced events they couldn't explain, but they knew they were connected to what was happening in Antarctica. Some had been part of secret operations and had discovered inexplicable structures beneath the ice. Others had been silenced when they asked too many questions. Messages began to flood in, one after another, with a single constant: "You were right." The most disturbing message came from a man who claimed to be a former government scientist. He sent me an encrypted email with a phrase that made me shudder: "You were right, but it's already too late." I read those words over and over, trying to understand what he meant. Had the plan already been set in motion? Had the seal already been broken? I tried to reach out again, but the email had vanished without a trace. The fear tightened around my chest. What was happening in Antarctica was no longer a possibility, but an imminent reality. Something had changed, and I feared that the revelation would be irreversible. Jesus' words still echoed in my mind: "I have shown you what is to come. Now it is up to you to warn the others." I didn't know how much time I had, or how many people would be willing to listen, but I knew my mission was clear: to alert everyone about the great lie about to be revealed. Over time, the news began to intensify. Newspaper headlines and news broadcasts were filled with theories about what might be hidden beneath the ice. The world was being prepared. They would start with small revelations, fragmented pieces of information that would gradually build a narrative. Soon, they would say that humanity had found the key to its future, that Antarctica revealed our true origin, an origin connected to an advanced civilization, possibly even extraterrestrial. But what they wouldn't reveal was that what was being discovered was not a gift for humanity, but a terror that had been guarded for millennia, a terror that would soon be unleashed. I knew that when that moment arrived, the world would react with a mix of euphoria and astonishment. Many would see it as a great victory for science, as the next step in human evolution. But those who were prepared would see the truth behind this revelation. The enemy would not force people to choose between good and evil. He would convince them that evil was good, and the majority would fall into the trap. Then a frightening message reached me, an email from a former government scientist who had a direct link to the secret Antarctic research. He wrote to me in an encrypted code, and when I opened it, the words sent chills down my spine. "You were right, but it's already too late." I read that phrase several times, trying to understand what he meant. Had the secret already been on the verge of being revealed, or had what I feared already begun? I rushed to try to contact him again, but the email had vanished as if it had never existed. Desperation took hold of me. I knew there was no more time. The revelations were about to occur, and the truth that Jesus had shown me was more urgent than ever. Yet at the same time, a sense of powerlessness grew. What more could I do? I couldn't fight against such a vast, well-orchestrated system. All I could do was share what I knew, warn those willing to listen, and pray that it wasn't too late. The most terrifying part was realizing that most of the world wouldn't be ready for what was coming. The enemy had infiltrated so deeply that the truth had become invisible to the majority. They would believe in the great lie. They would accept what was coming as progress, as an advancement for humanity, but in reality, they were being led to perdition. As time passed and events unfolded, I felt the urgency becoming unbearable. I knew that the lies were being prepared to be revealed to the world, and humanity was being conditioned to accept them. Every new announcement about Antarctica, every seemingly scientific discovery, made me feel as if I were watching a plan already in motion, a plan that could not be stopped. I knew the world was not ready. The narrative was being carefully constructed, and the great deception would soon take hold of everyone. They would start with small revelations, mixing truth with lies, and when the moment came, everyone would be ready to accept the lie as the greatest truth. What I saw before me was not just a scientific revelation, it was the beginning of a grand illusion. The enemy was preparing the stage for the greatest deceit in history, and most people would fall for it. But I knew I couldn't give up. Even if I were just one person trying to warn the world, I had a mission to fulfill. The truth needed to be shared, no matter the consequences. The lie would be spread in such a way that it would be nearly impossible for most people to see beyond it. But those with eyes to see, those with hearts willing to listen, would recognize the truth. I only hoped they would be enough. In those days, a growing sense of urgency consumed me. The lie was about to be revealed, and I didn't know how much time I had left. The news began to intensify, and the signs were there for everyone to see, but few were ready to perceive them. The world was being prepared for a great revelation, and at the same time for a colossal deception. What was being hidden beneath the ice of Antarctica was not merely a scientific discovery, it was a secret with the power to transform the entire reality we know. I saw scientists, leaders, even spiritual figures, all aligning to receive this gift and propagate it as a breakthrough for humanity. They would believe they were ushering in the future, but in truth, they would be opening the doors to a dark past, something that should never have been unleashed. Jesus' words echoed in my mind. They will present this as the key to the future, but it is the door to perdition. I wished I could do more, wished I could stop what was happening, but I didn't have the power to do so. All that remained was to warn those willing to listen. Those with discernment, with open hearts, would be able to see through the lie. The deception would be so profound that even the most devout would be at risk of succumbing to it. But with God's help, I knew that those who sought the truth would find it. As the world moved toward the revelation, I felt an overwhelming pressure. Time was running out, and my mission had never been clearer: to warn others, to share what I knew. I had already seen what lay behind the curtains, the forces moving in the shadows, manipulating everything. The world was being prepared for the greatest deception of all time, and I knew that the lie would be accepted with ease. Humanity would be convinced that it was experiencing a new awakening, an evolution, but in reality, they were walking toward the edge of a precipice. I didn't know how much time I had left, but I knew that my work was never ending. There was a greater force guiding me, a truth I needed to share, regardless of the consequences. Even if only a few listened, even if I were ridiculed, I had to continue. The world was blind to what was really happening, but for those who were prepared, the truth would be clear. I knew that Jesus had shown me this for a reason, not to scare me, but to give me the chance to warn those who could still hear. Now, with the truth in my hands, there was only one thing left to do: wait. The revelation was drawing near, and soon the world would be confronted with the lie that was already being sown. All I could do was continue to fight with the weapons I had, the word, the truth, and faith. And as time ran out, I knew that God was in control, guiding those who were willing to see, listen, and prepare. All I could do was trust in the divine plan.